Hey everybody, and welcome back to Feedback Loop. I'm Joey,
And I'm Jeremy.
and this week we're talking about an album that I picked out, and I pronounced it wrong whenever I picked it last week, so I'm going to pronounce it right now. It's Jesu by the band Jesu,
I mean,
and
to be clear, the band name is confirmed as Jesu. Maybe the album name is not
yeah,
Jesu.
maybe it's Jesu or however I said it last week. That
Who
could be,
knows?
but
Jesu.
yeah. Either way, I hadn't really I'm not super familiar with it. I had listened to at least most of it once
Mm-hmm.
before, but other than that, like it was a while ago. It was back whenever I was listening to Def Heaven a little bit. I think before we did the episode on them,
So did this
and
come up as like a recommendation?
yeah, it was somewhere on Spotify's recommendations for this. Like you might
Gotcha.
also like this, so I
Well, you
listened to it.
might, and I
Yeah.
might as well.
And we don't know. But your path to divinity might change how you feel about this album.
It's true because Jesu is the name of the band, and so experiencing this is some kind of divine sense that starts with track number one, your path to divinity.
Already starting
We're
fresh,
killing
you know.
it. I feel like we're gonna have it unlocked this week. It
I
just
hope
feels
so.
right.
I hope so.
But yeah,
Uh,
so your path to divinity. First introduction to this band, and again, you said that you weren't super familiar, so I
mhm.
don't want to like steal all of the like
Well,
excitement. But
so I mean, like I'd listened to a little bit of it. I don't know if I'd heard this song, but
mm-hmm.
just right from the get go, it starts out with this like super bassy. Like I can't even describe it how like bassy and low this like chunky guitar
It's
and
very
bass is.
sludgy.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if you've ever listened to Sun. It's like
I've not.
it's stylized like Sun with a zero in
Yeah,
parentheses.
we've
But
talked about them briefly
yeah,
off the podcast, I
oh
think.
okay. Uh, but yeah, like they're just this drone metal band where it's just super slow tempo,
Yeah,
and it's just I mean it's droning, and I really fucking like it. It's slow and atmospheric. It's like it's not a song right like immediately you can tell this isn't a song that you'd be like jamming in the car like I'm gonna put this on a mixtape and what like you'd be
speak for
listen
yourself, man.
I guess that's true. If you put it with a bunch of stuff like this and knew what was happening, then yes. But yeah, it's just very slow, very heavy, very dark, very atmospheric, and it gradually picks up like momentum. And by
hmm
momentum, I do not mean speed because it doesn't pick up speed,
Right. It just
but
kind of it builds, but it doesn't really build to anything. It just kind of like takes its time. It zones you out with just like you said, the droning atmosphere, the plodding kind of sludgy sounds. It's very interesting, and it's very like I don't want to say it's ambient necessarily, but
mm-hmm.
it is in a lot of ways. The vocals come in with some like very like kind of almost jarring high organ keys about like 4 minutes in. That's another thing with this album. Quickly, I'd like to point out. Uh, every track almost is over 9 minutes.
Yep.
They're very long tracks. There's 8 tracks on this album, and the total runtime is like an hour and 15-ish minutes,
Yeah.
maybe a little less. But yeah, so very long, slow plotting album or tracks on the album, which kind of works, I think, for the style of music. I mean, it makes sense if you think of like a typical structured song, especially in pop. It's more upbeat, it's more up tempo, so it can cover more measures in a shorter amount of time, kind of a thing. So it's just taking all of that and slowing it down and spreading it out and letting everything kind of sink in when it changes and it fits the kind of sludgy guitar tones and stuff that goes on. But yeah, there's kind of like this climax and this release of tension, and then it kind of comes back in with a little bit more pep and drive towards the end. There's a lot of different textures. The vocals are just like they're not super melodic, and they're kind of washed out by a lot of the noise, which is kind of something that happens in this kind of style of music anyway. But yeah, it just like it spaces me out in a way very similar to Def Heaven's Sunbather that we did. How I just like I put it on, I zone out, and I don't really think about what I'm listening to, and I don't really think about anything. I just kind of turn my brain off, and it just takes me away. And this whole album is like that for the most part for me, and it just kind of like it comes in slowly, it builds, and then it leaves slowly.
Yep. So I hope that sits well with you. I feel like, I mean, Deaf Heaven did, so at least the general vibe, I guess, does.
Yeah, spoilers. I actually really like this album.
Oh, oh, okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, there are some lull points.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna say low points necessarily, but there are some tracks in No Land as well with me. But overall, I really enjoyed this week's experience.
Well, that's nice because I did too. It's definitely one, like you were talking. All the songs are around 9 minutes, or there's one that's like 11 and a half minutes,
Yeah, the
and
shortest one is just under 7 minutes. The longest one's about 11 and a half.
it it I don't want to say it doesn't feel like it,
Yeah,
but it the time passes fine. Like it's
it
not like,
does. Yeah, it doesn't like, despite the music being slow and like slow tempoed and the tracks being so long, it doesn't feel out of place. It doesn't feel longer than it needs to be or shorter. In most cases, there is one exception that I feel on this track is maybe a bit longer than it needed to be, but we'll get to that.
yeah. Uh yeah, I like there, and lyrics wise, it's crazy because if you look at the lyrics to this song, it's 9 minutes and 14 seconds long.
Yeah.
There's like 6 lines of lyrics. It's bored of the things that you are, and now the things that you were. How does it feel to destroy everything by your guilt?
Which is, it's kind of cryptic and kind of
Yeah.
vague. And I don't know, I really like the concept of this album, I think, at least what I got about it. So yeah, you read the lyrics. It makes me think that someone's kind of been running from their past and trying to like keep themselves distracted with something new so that way they don't have to really worry about whatever it is they did. The title of the song being Your Path to Divinity kind of implies that they're approaching things with like a holier than thou attitude, perhaps, which I think kind of flows through a lot of this album. Obviously, the band's called Jesu, and the song titles are very like evocative of religion, I suppose. So I think that kind of ties in thematically nice with this holier than thou attitude that I've kind of picked up on throughout the album.
Yeah, I don't know how to really approach it. Um my immediate thoughts were like, whenever you hit a point of being bored with who you are, and you can't even see the past you in a good light, either
Mm-hmm.
because of like how you've changed, or just you were still that person, or like, but you you're kind of looking back, looking for like, well, things used to be good, but you can't even do that.
So, out of curiosity, do you think this is a second person track where he's kind of talking about himself and addressing himself as you? Or do you think there's a second person involved? Or like a literal second person, I guess. That was kind of a poor way to phrase what I was trying to say. But the perspective, do you
Yeah.
think it's him talking to somebody else or him talking to himself?
See, that's where I don't know, because there are other points in the album where it seems like there's another person,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know, because
It
it
is
could
very cryptic and vague.
it's super cryptic, and it could even be like a prayer situation where he's reflecting on his life. Like,
Yeah.
this is it seems religiously themed, and Justin Broderick, the guy who is behind Jesu, his previous band, well, I guess they still do stuff, but it's called Godflesh, which, knowing that, I don't like it. I don't think he's a religious guy, but maybe he's like a super religious guy. I
I
really
don't know.
don't
I
know.
kind of I didn't pick up. I didn't really, I guess, focus in on that too much. I thought it was more of a stylistic choice
Yeah.
because it's. I think religion is super fascinating. I mean, we talk shit about it all the time, but it's very like it's very evocative. It has a lot of imagery that is very cool. You know, you got angels and demons. They're symbolic of the good and evil that is in the world, kind of a thing. So I kind of just viewed it as like a skin or a theme
Yeah.
that has just been kind of layered on top of the demons that he is dealing with in this album.
Yeah. Religion definitely has some super cool lore if you look into it. Like, if you do deep dives. But yeah, it
Yeah,
could just be like a thematic choice.
yeah,
And
and I didn't necessarily. I'm still not 100% certain whether this album is directed at a person or if it's at himself, kind of a thing. I kind of got the idea that this was about a former friend,
mhm.
and maybe he's just kind of like on this vibe of like, fuck this, I don't need my friends. My friends are all evil anyway. So I'm just gonna fucking write an album about how evil my friends are.
Well, then he definitely personified that in track number 2, Friends Are Evil.
Nailed
And
it.
you were right, man. It worked.
We're gonna keep it going, hopefully. But yeah, this one also starts out with some grainy ass low bass chugging. It's so good. It remains underneath the high shoegaze guitars that come in and the drums, and this track is very noisy in
Mm-hmm.
that kind of shoegaze fashion. It's almost industrial with how like aggressive and not melodic it is, and then the song kind of quote unquote starts and it comes in with a very nice warm feeling. This album to me feels very warm just for some reason, and it's like a cold warmth, like maybe I'm just numb kind of a thing where like frostbite has taken my limbs and I can't feel them and I'm feeling warm. But I don't know, it's so interesting the feeling that I get from listening to this kind of music.
So, I I 100% agree with the warmness, and it's even the cold warmness. Like I even described it as like I'm warm water is washing over me, and I think it's the super low tones that are just
Yeah,
like throughout the whole, like it's super abrasive, distorted. It like at the beginning it sounds like a rumbling like monster.
yeah,
And cuz this song, I feel this song is heavier than the previous song, just like tons of distortion. You can hear disgust and anger, but the bass part of it just kind of washes over you, and it's like a blanket that wraps you, like wraps around you. And I almost think of it as like, I don't know, like a thunder jacket or something that's
yeah.
trying to comfort you in a time of hardship, I
I
guess.
definitely get that. I'm glad that we're on the same page there because I literally like I wrote for one, the vocals on this track are super fucking familiar to me, and I can't place why. There's no way that I've heard this before. I can't think of any reason I would have listened to this, but the vocals on this album, a lot of the tracks on this album feel super familiar to me. This song specifically, just I wrote it just feels right, and I can't describe why. So I'm glad that we're kind of on the same vibe as far as the cold warmth kind of thing. Also, there was an interesting thing I picked up on the drums for this track. I don't know if it's throughout the rest of the album. I wasn't super like locked in on the drums per se, but I noticed that there's an open hi-hat for the drums that it sounds like it's just a reversed clip of the hi-hat. So it's like it's not even like just someone drumming. It's like they played the drum part and then they went in and they reversed the hi-hat track to make it sound a little bit more like off kilter and interesting to me. It kind of has a bit of a rise to it.
That could be, like, I know he's trying to go for like, he has stated that like Jesu is was him trying to go in a more not pop direction, but a more like typical music sounding direction, but
Right.
still keep his experimentation from his previous. Because Godflesh was like a metal band, like a full on metal band,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to go keep a more experimental sound, but kind of go towards a more typical, I guess, song structure, song writing experience. And that's, there's just certain things in here that sound off. Like it
Yeah.
sounds industrial. It sounds eerie. It sounds like there's a very high, like ethereal sound that comes over the vocals, and it gives it a more somber quality along with the heaviness. And it's just little touches like the hi hat, like those sounds, like there's certain keys in here that sound like some sort of electric church organ, not
Yes.
necessarily on this song, but like, I mean, I it's in this song too, but in a lot of other songs as well, and it just gives it a nice round quality that just kind of like puts you in a state of unease, but
Yeah.
there's something that's keeping you here, I guess.
Yeah. It's so fascinating because like I don't know, this album kind of caught me off guard in that it's so raw and it's so like it was honestly like reminding me and making me think like, hey, maybe I need to go back and listen to Hella again, legitimately, because it was just like it's so like unproduced, but it's not. It's very like produced, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Like we mentioned, the hi hats and the organs and everything. It sounds raw in a way that I wasn't expecting, but it's so good. It feels so good to listen to, and I don't know. It's like it's that Death Haven thing again. It's not something that I would have on paper thought that I would have liked, because the sounds by themselves don't really add up to things that I typically like. But as a whole, it feels right.
It feels very right. And the lyrics, however, are like I they're just very cryptic and not in a like I feel like everything I can possibly think of about these lyrics comes back negative and
Yeah,
like depressing almost.
yeah, no, for sure, and I definitely get that throughout this album, and more specifically, the next track is very like depressive, I think. But I kind of like, I don't know. The song's called Friends Are Evil. I felt like this one was the singer acknowledging that they've made mistakes in the past, and kind of like comparing that to their friend that they had, their former friend, maybe lover, that kind of seems to be drawn in at some point. But because he's just like, he's saying like, I know I've thrown stones and I've been hit by stones that they come back twice as strong, is kind of the hook. I know the stones I've thrown, they come back twice as strong. But he also like calls them out and says, I know stones you've thrown come from your highest throne. So again, it's kind of bringing that holier than thou attitude, but also acknowledging that he's fucked up and he's like accepting that. And then the last line of all of the verses, he says, they remind me nothing lasts. And I think that that could be a double meaning, where he's talking both about the fact that he feels betrayed by the close friend, and saying that like, okay, his friendship didn't last, and like no real friendship is ever going to last, kind of a thing. But it's also potentially saying that like the feeling of guilt doesn't last forever. Like he was able to make peace with his past mistakes, so they no longer haunt him, kind of a thing. And maybe that's just me looking too far into it, but I thought it was kind of a cool double meaning.
So, I think I might have leaned too hard into the religious subtext.
I mean, I don't think that's possible. Again, it's the band is called Jesu, the album is called Jesu. There's a lot of religious subtext and everything. So I'm curious though, where'd you go?
So, I went to someone who's grappling with religion. Like, I know the stones I've thrown, they come back twice as strong. Like, maybe he feels like he had lashed out at God or somebody, and it came back to bite him
Mm-hmm.
in the future. And in the second verse, whenever he's saying, I know the stones you've thrown come from your highest throne, like maybe I took that as like God himself is just up in the fucking ivory tower, like throwing stones, metaphorical stones at him, and just like passing out shit. But I think I clung to it because of like the whole let he who is without sin cast the first stone at
Yeah.
her thing. And I think my mind just went there instead of I don't know. I think yours makes more sense.
I mean, I took it more of like an idiomatic, like people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, whereas throwing stones is just kind of an idiom for like talking shit, I guess, or like insulting someone else, kind of a thing. But it could, I definitely could understand having the religious, because this is one of the few tracks that I didn't really pick up on a religious subtext. So maybe there is something there and I just missed it.
That might have been my problem is that there's other tracks with more religious subtext and I
Yeah.
just had to put it into this one or something.
I
But
mean, it's kind of a concept album. I think there is kind of a through line. I took it more as about the relationship with another person, but that other person could certainly be God, being a literal holier than thou kind of figure. So I don't
well,
know. We have two slightly different perspectives on the same story, I think.
yeah. Well, Justin Broderick, if you're out there and you feel like clearing things up, we always invite the
For sure.
artist to come out here and tell us what they think. Or I mean, if you're tired of me, like tell me that and just shit on me for getting your song wrong. That's fine too. But
Well, hopefully we won't shit on the next track. Tired of me. Killing it. Track number 3. This one's cool. It starts with like this almost like children's lullaby feel with like some plinky keys, although it's still very echoey and washy, kind of giving it that like unsettling feel. The guitar and the bass and the drums come in, and it just punches right through that, and it feels super good. And I just, again, the vocals so warm and they're so familiar to me, and I can't explain why. And there's a nice echo on the vocal track, and it matches kind of the slow, sludgy instrumentals. And this is the point where I noted I just want to sit in a sensory deprivation tank and listen to this album, because I feel like that would be an insane experience. I even looked up, there is an alternative therapy, I guess, place on this side of the river that we live
Oh,
on, that
well,
I might actually go through with this, and because I'm just curious. Like I've always been curious about sensory deprivation tanks, but yeah, I feel like this album would be perfect to just kind of like mellow out and focus on nothing and just have it playing it, because it makes me feel like I'm having some weird like out of body experience where my soul is like floating up into space, and then the organs come in like the ending third of the song, and it really sells the ending of the song, and it allows the big boom of the other instrumentals to like pack this visceral punch. And just like there's such a feeling of like existential doom and finality, and in almost a funereal way, with the organ kind of coming in, and it feels like we're just mourning the loss of the whole humanity, like the whole human race is in jeopardy here, and we're all just kind of like weeping for it. And then at the end there's also the snare drum cadence that kind of comes in, and it aligns with what I was thinking already about kind of the doom and funeral kind of feel to it, and it feels like the soul is leaving the body.
yeah, that's why I like music like this. It sounds like a funeral march, and like those drums at the end. It sounds like they're just drumming to a march,
Mm-hmm.
like to march, and it's just there's just something so eerie about it. There's another band, I think they're called Grief, and it's just like it just gives a feeling like no other music can,
Yeah.
and it's just I like it a lot. As far as the vocals go, you say they sound familiar. They sounded very familiar for me. Have you ever listened to Baroness?
I I have actually, maybe I feel like I've heard some of Baroness.
Because specifically from their Blue album is what kind of this song makes me think of. Now this album predates it by a while.
Mm-hmm.
Like this album came out in 2004, which to think that this album came out in 2004
Yeah, it's
is
crazy.
yeah, it's pretty fucking
It's
awesome. Like
almost 20 years ago now.
it just seems listening to it now it makes me think that it was like ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I wasn't in 2004, I was 11,
Yeah.
10, so I
Yeah.
wasn't really on the scene here, especially because this guy's from Wales, like so this was
Right.
across the pond, and I definitely wasn't. I don't know what the scene was like there. This could have been right in line with what was coming out, but hearing this now, it definitely makes me think like, whoa,
It doesn't feel nearly as dated as it is.
yeah, it feels really like it could have been made last year, and
For sure.
I wouldn't think anything of
I
it.
mean, especially with my narrow context of this kind of music, like I'm just starting to get into like shoegaze and stuff, and specifically like the Deaf Heaven album we did last year. Like that was the first time I'd heard anything similar to this, and that kind of whole style of music is something very much novel and new to me. So maybe it's just that like it's been there and it's been underground for a while, kind of a thing, or it's not been super popular, but now shoegaze seems to maybe be coming out, and we have this kind of thick backlog to work through of things, of gems that we've missed in our lifetime, kind of a thing.
That's just the best feeling. Finding something that has a backlog that you can be like, oh my God, there's a treasure trove of things that I've never heard, and I get to just listen to them all now.
Yeah, I genuinely might listen through all of Jesu's discography, just because this album really hit home with me.
I listened to he came out with an album in 2020 called Terminus that I also listened to today.
Is that
So
is that a wreck?
that's a wreck. I like it.
I'll check it out.
But so the vocals are familiar and it sounds like a funeral march. The lyrics here are like you mentioned, like it's just about like self-loathing, depression. Like
Yeah,
it's they're very sad, very dark, doom and gloom to match the music. Like a funeral march deserves sad lyrics. Like the song "Tired of Me," he's not necessarily talking strictly about somebody else being tired of him. the first line is "I'm so tired of me,"
Right.
which is just like, I don't know. It's
That's the
just,
most depressing thing anyone can say.
yeah, you're like, I'm just fucking done. Like, you just looking in a mirror and you're like, I don't want this anymore.
Yeah,
And
which
it's
is
just,
it's not great.
I laugh,
Side
but
plug.
damn.
Yeah, side plug. If you are having feelings like that, that's not normal. You should call the suicide prevention lifeline, get a therapist, someone talk to you. That number, because I've made a statement that I'm going to keep plugging it every chance that something like this comes up, is 1-800-273-8255. So if you are having thoughts like this, absolutely give them a call, because it's not worth ending your life.
And then when you're at a point where you're ready, listen to this album.
For sure. I would maybe not. Well, I don't know. I feel like music is very therapeutic, and
Yeah.
that maybe if you are experiencing things, it's nice to know that other people have gone through it and have prevailed from
Yeah.
those times. So maybe listen to this if you can handle it. Obviously, if you don't think you're in a state that you can handle an album that is talking very plainly about depression and stuff, maybe don't. But it could benefit you, perhaps.
Yeah. It benefits me. I fucking love it. It's,
Yeah,
I guess
because
I
it's
don't know if I
real.
love it. I
Sadness
crave
and
it.
depression is real, especially with our generation. It seems that like anxiety is at the forefront of everyone's like personality. Everyone is always anxious about something, and depression is so widespread and not accepted, but it's more publicized, I suppose, than it has been in the past. And being able to share that experience is, I think, a good thing.
Definitely. That's why I feel like you see a lot of that sad boy type music
Yeah,
now. I'm
which
calling, I don't,
I don't necessarily agree with marketing it
yeah.
or like using it for personal gain necessarily, but I that was obviously not the intention here. This was just him writing his feelings and thoughts, which is what art should be.
Hell yeah. Rock on, Justin Broderick. You're
Fucking
super
killing
cool.
it.
Yeah.
And even if you are feeling those feelings of depressions, it's okay. If you made a mistake and you're dwelling on it, we all falter. We're gonna get better. We can get past it. Everyone makes mistakes.
We can get past it just like we can get past track 3 onto track 4. We all falter.
Nailed
Nailed it, dude. That
it.
was fucking good. That was, I like that.
We're
And
killing it.
also, I think this title's spelled wrong unless it's
Yes,
spelled differently in like,
I
because I
had
mean
the same thoughts.
he is from Wales,
I
so I don't.
kind of I feel like it might be intentional. We'll get to that in the lyrics,
Yeah.
just because I have a theory.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's accurate or not, but we'll get there. But yeah, we all falter. This one almost has another kind of industrial intro with the pounding drums and the super distorted bass. The vocals on this one felt different to me, more similar to like Your Path to Divinity than in the previous two tracks that I noted were like super familiar to me. And I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's not. He doesn't have two different singers on this album, and it's just him. But it feels like he's kind of singing in two different styles at some points throughout this album.
Yeah, he definitely is. This one doesn't have, yeah, like you said, that familiar sound that I attributed to sounding in the same vein as like Baroness, which I
Right.
think like it is just him doing it. So I guess I don't know if if it's a stylistic choice or if it's. I mean, I guess it would have to be a stylistic
Yeah.
choice. He chose to do it, but like if it's supposed to mean something more than just he thought the sound went better with the song, or if it's supposed to be like a different point of view or something like. The lyrics are so cryptic. It made me start thinking about stuff like that. Like, if he's singing in a different voice, is it supposed to be a different person? Is it supposed to
Right.
be
A different
from a different?
character.
Yeah, but I, I don't know. It's this one. I like. It's the shortest track on the album at 6 minutes and 56 seconds,
Yeah.
and it starts with like a very poundy drum behind it, like with that. I guess the expected super chuggy, chunky,
Hmm.
bassy, very low tone guitar, but it seems to be more scaled back and less harsh, at least
Yeah.
music wise.
And I think this is one of the tracks that I'm not super on board with, and
Hmm.
it's interesting because it's the shortest one. I'm not hating on it because it's shorter than all the others at all, but it I don't know. It feels kind of indistinct. Like, I don't know. There's not a lot going on musically in this track, and it seems like the focus is more on the lyrics or the vocals and the meaning of that than the music itself. So for me, that's kind of a miss. But I think lyrically, it kind of makes up for it. It makes sense. if you're cool with moving on to the lyrics. I don't
Oh
want to
yeah,
jump into it.
go for it.
So it has a similar theme to the previous tracks. This whole album kind of has very similar themes, where I kind of felt like this was him accepting his mistakes and even going on to invite the other person to blame him for their mistakes. Like he was in this relationship or whatever, and they're like blaming him. He's like, you know what, take it. And so I was wondering about the song title. It's We All Falter. And he says, we all falter because we all falter, lay the blame on me, lay the blame onto me. And I was wondering, maybe he's saying that like everyone is faulting her. It's fault her because she's at
Okay.
fault, kind of a thing. Saying we all fault her, so go ahead and blame me because like everyone else knows it's not my fault at this point. I've accepted that. So if you want to keep blaming me, go on because my conscience is clean. Is kind of where I thought that maybe it was intentional.
I could see that because yeah, it does even like lay the blame onto me. Yeah. Okay, I like where your head's at. I like
So
it.
so what's the religious angle on this one?
Well, I don't really have too much of one,
Damn.
other than I thought it was like a stay the path type deal, where
Mm-hmm.
like the previous ones where he was battling with his faith, I guess, or had was feeling like he at least needed to pay for whatever shit that he had said
Yeah,
in the past,
atone for
or
his sins.
yeah, and maybe this was like I don't know, like from a different person's perspective. Like maybe it was from God's perspective or something.
Yeah,
Like,
someone just reassuring him.
yeah. But that's a stretch. And I like where you went because that would explain the title as well.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a pun, which doesn't necessarily seem on brand for the album,
Yeah.
but I don't know. That was the reason. That's where my mind went with it being misspelled. It felt like it was intentional, even though again, like you said, maybe it is just a British spelling of it. But I hadn't seen any spelling of falter like that.
Yeah. I know
So
they like to throw U's in places like in favorite and color and
yeah, places they don't belong.
yeah, places they don't belong now that we took English over here and
Yeah, we're
changed
over here.
stuff.
We're the holier than thou characters in this story now because we're over here walking on water
Yeah.
and they're over there drowning in their misspellings of words.
I'm gonna walk on water right over there and slap the U's right out of their fucking words. And
Do it.
also listen. I'm gonna listen to track number 5 the whole way. Walk on water.
Nailed it. There's a lot of water between us and them.
Yeah, that would take a
So
long time.
we better get walking.
Yeah, good thing this track is 11 and a half minutes long.
True facts. This is the one. So this is the longest track, and I'm just gonna outright say it. I feel like this song is too long. I feel like this was like I feel like they wrote the song and it was like half as long. He's like, you know what? That's too short for this album. We're going for 10 minutes. We're gonna play this track twice back to back and see if anyone notices. That's kind of like how this song feels to me.
But okay, I can see where you're saying that. I don't necessarily think it's a very long song.
Yeah.
We'll just throw that out there. 11 and a half minutes is a long fucking time for a
Right.
song.
But it's not necessarily out of place on this album because again, a lot of these tracks are 9.5, 10 minutes long.
Yeah, I get the funeral march vibes from this song as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it does a good job. Like it plays it up for about 5 minutes, and then the music drops, and it's about echoey vocals. I think this first part, if any part we're gonna get kind of cut, I think the first 5 minutes of the funeral march could kind of be scaled back, maybe a
Yeah.
minute or two, because I like where the music drops out and the echoey vocals come in
Agreed.
and then it changes back to the slow march again. I think that could be a little bit shorter, but then it hits around 7 minutes and 30 seconds and the song changes up again. The guitar gets a little more drony, but it maintains the heaviness. There's more riffage to it, but it's still really slow. I feel like it could have been kind of maybe compartmentalized to the more normal 9.5 minutes
Yeah.
on this album and still kept the changes, but I don't mind the length of the song, I guess.
Yeah. I think this was at a point in my notes in the album that I was just like, man, it's really sinking in how long all of these songs are and how much time I'm sitting here listening to the same thing. And again, like it's not necessarily a bad thing that it's just it's the genre, right? It's very drony. It's very like I don't want to say one note but each song kind of has its profile. It has its arcs, and those arcs are very long. And so I don't know. This one kind of felt like it was maybe going a bit too far in that direction for me.
I can feel it. I mean, I can't fault anybody for not being 100% on an 11.5 minute song that's mostly like, boom, boom.
It's a very, very good sound descriptor of
Hell
this
yeah.
album.
But man, when that melody changes up at around 7.5 minutes,
Yeah.
I really like that change. It hits
Yeah.
hard. And oh, look, even in my notes, I could definitely see this not being for everybody, but it's for me. So there we
Oh,
go.
yeah. Perfect. We're yet again on the same page. Lyrically is where we're going to differ, probably, maybe, because it seems to be the case on this album. But I was kind of going back to him feeling like he's been used by a former friend, and because the lyrics, again, very simple lyrics in this track. He just repeats, "Be there for your summer, be dead by the winter." Pretty much the entire song is just that, repeated over and over again, which it makes me think that like he's saying like I was there for the highs, but when it got less high, right? When the season started changing and things were not looking as exciting and fun as they were in the summer, then you abandoned me, and I'm gonna be dead in the cold of the winter because you don't give a shit, kind of a thing.
Yeah, this is where, I mean, taking out the last song, I don't know where this would line up in my religious line.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's
I
more
mean,
likely that
it's titled "Walk on Water,"
yeah,
obviously a reference to Jesus.
yeah. And if we're keeping with the religious theme, I also don't know if it's supposed to be like him talking about himself, where maybe this is like a redemption arc where he was like, "Hey, I was here for the good parts of the religion, but I was gone for I didn't keep my faith in the bad parts," or if it's he's flipping the script and being like, "Look, God, you were like, sure, there were times that were all dandy, but whenever I needed you,
You weren't
whenever I
there.
was, yeah, you weren't there." And I don't know which way to go with it, I guess.
I like that. Maybe we can think about it. We can write it up a bit more. Take it to church on Sunday, and ask a preacher
Yeah.
what they think about it.
And you know what? On Sunday, there's going to be plenty of sun on that day because we're going to be listening to track number 6, Sunday, but it's Sunday.
Indeed.
Sunday.
Well, okay, so that's wordplay. So maybe Falter was wordplay.
Yeah.
Back in track number 4. I feel a little bit redeemed.
There you go.
On
And
that.
quick anecdote, back whenever I was a religious young chap, the pastor, the father at my church, my school, his name was Sunny Day.
Hell yeah.
Was his name. So it was yeah.
Do you know if
Sunday.
that was his birth name? Or if it was a changed name?
I at least know Day was his real last name, and it was Sunny, like Sonny. So it was like,
right.
I feel like it couldn't have been his real name, but there was never like the parentheses or
right.
the quotes around it like it was a nickname. It was always Father Sunny Day.
Interesting.
So,
well, track number 6 is Sunday.
yeah.
And it starts with some lovely reverby, drony synth notes that are, again, I think it's that organ kind of synth sound. And I really like the use of organ throughout this whole album to kind of tie in the spiritual and religious theme that's used throughout the album. The vocals on this one are, again, kind of dissonant and detuned, similar to like tracks 4 and 1, where it felt less familiar to me, but it also still has a lot of the warmth of the other tracks. There's some nice, cool building sections and some just as nice stripped down organ sections in this one. This track's also 10 minutes long, so it's one of the longer ones on it, but it doesn't feel too long to me. The length really gives this one time for a lot of the music to just kind of soak into your skin and then carry you off into space before the big ending of this track.
Hell yeah. I really like this track, not only because it introduces probably the harshest vocals, I guess, that are on the album. They're not like full on death growls or anything, but
That's
you
the
can
next
tell.
track.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Man, I'm just probably dumb.
I'm gonna...
It is the next track. It's totally the next track. So, you know what? Just fuck me, right?
Are your numbers off again?
My numbers are off again because I can't fucking count. But okay, so this one. So, that opening organ part.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about this. I really like this track as well. And does that opening organ part, did it strike you as familiar in any way? Because it instantly made me think of something.
I wasn't locked in on anything. What did it make you think of?
Okay, so it makes me think of "Just What I Am" by Kid Cudi and King Chip. That opening, just the chords of the organ.
I can see that.
And it was just like, yeah. And it just like, I was able to separate that from my mind, but it like the first time I heard it, I was like, I gotta look this up. I gotta see if fucking Kid Cudi was sampling Sunday.
That would be a power move that would blow our minds.
Like that's for a good minute. I was like, oh my god, is this like have I come full circle and completed my purpose in life?
That would be insane.
But it wasn't. At least not that I could find. I mean,
side note, go check out Indicud by Kid Cudi. Maybe okay. That's gonna open up a whole can of worms. I was gonna say maybe not if you're like not super familiar with Kid Cudi. We'll do an episode where we just talk about Kid Cudi, maybe.
Yeah, there we go.
Because there's a lot to discuss with his discography, I think.
A whole lot. But yeah, this song, it's good. I like it. It feels triumphant more than a funeral march. Like you're seeing the sun crest a mountain after a long, hard night. It's not full of this enveloping blackness of bass and low frequencies. It's still got those traits, but it doesn't feel as crushing to me.
Because it's Sunday. It's a day of worship.
Day of worships, more like it.
Worships. But yeah, again, lyrically, this is kind of amidst the context of all of the religious references throughout the album, and again, the artist being called Jesu. I kind of get the feeling lyrically that the singer's talking about missing the person that abandoned them, and he's been kind of like shit talking on the whole album. And I think instead of Falter being a bitter track, he's actually saying at this point that like, or at that point that he's like, I'm going to take all of the blame for what happened. I'm going to give you a clean pass because I want you to have another chance, because I'm just in love with you, and I don't want this to end. And if all it takes is me to say it was my fault, then I'll do that. I'll take all of the blame. And then there's another layer to this where it feels like he's recognizing how insane that is, and he's comparing that to his worshiping of the person, right? Because it's Sunday, and the other person that I've pinned as this holier than thou person, he's worshiping them to some fucked up level. And I think that's kind of an interesting dissonance or subtext to a lot of the album.
I just had a thought that maybe this whole thing is supposed to be able to be taken in a religious context and in like a friendship relationship context, because maybe he's trying to create some sort of like, I don't know, through line there. Like it's supposed to be like he's comparing the two types of worship or love, or
right.
I don't know. That
I could totally see that. That makes sense to me.
Because
I think I almost got there in my notes when I was thinking about things, that I was kind of like, okay, well maybe it is supposed to be ambiguous and apply to both aspects, but I never explicitly came out and said it.
Because this song, like, I still don't know if it's applying to like religion or not. Like I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't know. I like that about the album, is that it's something that I liked about Neutral Milk Hotel. Like there's just so much ambiguity.
Yeah.
Jinx,
you will be coke.
But yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Man, woman. I
was about to pull a nice segue and say like it's unclear if he's talking about a man or a woman, but track number 7 is man/woman. So here we are. This one
that I was talking about when I was actually talking about the last track, about the
vocals,
the harsher vocals.
Yeah,
because we've been doing this podcast for a year and a half.
And you still can't count?
I still can't fucking count. I've been living for almost 28 years. I still can't count.
Just as an aside, there are 8 tracks on this album, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure that
there's like a bonus Japanese version where there's like a different versions, longer versions of...
They're cleaner mixed, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
maybe I'll have to go listen to that because I didn't do that. So,
But yeah, this song is not cleanly mixed. There's nothing clean about it. It starts with some kind of like almost shrill electric violin kind of sound that just drones on and on and on, and it gets some like support from the guitar with a little bit of lickage in there, and then the plodding metal rock instruments kind of come in about the minute mark, and everything's kind of back to what you'd expect. The vocals, though, as Joey mentioned previously, they're very like growly and distorted. It almost feels like someone pretending to be growly and death metal, because again, it's not like super growly, it's not super heavy, but it's just the hint of it there that's kind of like it sounds like someone's trying to be and can't quite get there, or they're imitating it instead of actually trying to be it, kind of a thing, which is kind of interesting. It's way more metal than we've heard in this album. And also, for the first time on this album that I picked up, the bass in a lot of sections isn't super distorted and fuzzy. It sounds more natural and warm, even if it is still a little bit distorted.
yeah, this one he actually did have a guest guitar player on as well.
Yeah,
It was the dude from Godflesh. I believe his name was Paul Neville. I think is what
sure.
his name was. I didn't. I had. I should have wrote things, but
Yeah, I think I also saw that somewhere, but I didn't
So,
write it down.
Paul Neville, if you're out there, and if that's not your name, then tell
It
me.
is. It is. I have it on here.
Okay, cool.
Guest appearance by Paul Neville on guitar on the track "Man/Woman."
Well, yeah, there you go. But yeah, you're totally on about like the I guess trying to recreate a growly like screechy sound. I don't know how to describe it, but it
Yeah,
does. Given the vocals on the rest of this album, it's completely different.
yeah. There's a definite intensity to this track.
And this one, it around 6 minutes, it seems to
Yes.
take okay. It seems to take like a really cool like prog turn in a
Yeah,
way that it reminds me of like a Porcupine Tree song,
I've not listened to
which,
Porcupine Tree.
well, you should, but we might listen to them on the podcast, so maybe you should. I don't know, but
We'll
it's
get there
cool.
when we get there.
I really like the turn that it takes at
Yeah,
around 6 minutes. It's really
I
fucking
I
cool.
agree. There's a lot of weird like synthy modulation stuff that happens, and it kind of gave me this like alien mothership vibe. And looking at the lyrics, like the lyrics he's talking about demons, and a lot of this album is religious in context. So I was kind of like, I kind of went off in my own mind during this. And I was like, I really like the idea that angels and demons are just aliens from other planes of existence. And I kind of like just kind of went in a weird sci-fi direction for a bit in my mind. But yeah, it's got this weird proggy thing. It's really cool. And then it kind of comes back, and it feels like there's an almost like new metal ending for
Hmm.
like the last third of it, where it kind of gives me more Static X vibes. I know I mentioned them last week, so maybe it's just fresh on my mind. But it doesn't have the slow, sludgy, shoegazy feel for the last part of the song. It just kind of like feels like a standard metal song, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, this one it definitely had plenty to keep you occupied for the 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And lyrically, it man, it's called Man Woman, and it adds more ambiguity because I don't know if he's talking about either a man or a woman. I don't know if he's talking about the relationship between men and women. I don't know if he's talking about man woman as like playthings from God's perspective or
Mm,
from a demon's perspective, or like there's just so many different ways that I took it, and
yeah.
I really just I could not pin it down. I can't give you a definite answer because I
Yeah.
don't have any
Part
answers.
part of the ambiguity comes from the fact that there's no like full sentences.
Yep.
The lyrics are success, demons, waste time, waste life, they give, suck life, thrill seek, dead eyes. That's most of the song. He just repeats that. So it's definitely open to interpretation, I think. So in my story, in my arc, I was like, okay, well maybe the singer is definitely like realizing he's insane at this point. While he wants to worship this person that he was in a relationship that betrayed him and hurt him, he's realized how fucked up it is, and he thinks the only solution is to go off the deep end into the dark side and maybe kill them, with that kind of like, if I can't have you, nobody can have you kind of mentality. And the song being so different felt like kind of a mental break, where this was like he's gone over the deep end at this point.
You know, thinking about what the next track is, I definitely like that more than I like this one. I didn't have any answers for, but I definitely think it's a break of some sort. Like
Yeah.
they're flipping the fuck out, and the the the, the other person's figuring it out. Like
Yeah, and
something's
like
happening.
the ending of the song, he repeats, "Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry," dead eyes. Like he's like killing someone and being like, "No, it's okay, it's okay. This is how it's supposed to be. Don't worry about it. You're gonna die, and that's just the way it has to be."
Yeah, and even your guardian angel can't save you now.
Well, maybe track 8 can, because track 8 is Guardian Angel.
But I just said your guardian angel
Fuck,
can't
man, I
save
was
you.
just trying. You made a good segue. You laid it up, and I missed the dunk.
Yeah.
Whatever. Is
It's
that a
isn't that
sport
an
thing?
alley oop? Is that what that's called in
Yes,
sports ball?
thank you. Thank you for that. I knew there was something there, but I couldn't get there because I don't sports. Track number 8, Guardian Angel. This one takes us right back into the bog of sludgy metal.
Sludgy
And
bug.
it's the sludgy bog. I love it. After man/woman, this one kind of feels like a return to form and familiarity. Like all of the wrongs have been made right, or maybe just repressed, and we're back in this kind of cycle of this guy's depression, kind of a thing. There's a lot of nice ambient noise that rounds out the last part of the song that kind of just lets you relax and come back down to earth after this kind of trip.
Yeah, like I really like the way this ends the album, just because it fits so well.
Yeah,
It like you said, it gets back to the heaviness, the really slow, like sludgy feel, and there's two verses. I guess they're verses. I don't really
sure.
know. They're
Sections.
sections, vocal sections, and after each one, it sounds like there's a little guitar solo noodly thing behind the heavy bass guitar. So that's like a cool little flavor
Yeah,
there. But I like the way it ends, where it just kind of devolves into an ever slowing heaviness that just gets slower and slower, and then the heaviness goes away, and it's just the guitar blaring out from what sounds like a fucking mile away, just riding you
yeah.
out for the last 3 minutes or so. And it's great.
It's very very cool ending. It's a very apt ending to this album. Lyrically, I feel like this one kind of really like circled back to the self-loathing of "Tired of Me" and the general like "fuck you" sentiments that are throughout the album that I was picking up on, and I think this track really sums up the album, at least from a lyrical standpoint for me. It's also maybe possible that the reason that the singer feels so bitter about the situation, at least in my narrative, is because of how similar they are to the bad guy. Like they're constantly throughout this album comparing themselves, it seems, where they're kind of implying this similar perspective on things, and maybe that's why the singer was super obsessed with this other person, other personality slash deity slash whatever it is, because they're kind of like on the same wavelength, but maybe one's better than the other. Maybe he's just pissed because he's not as good as the other person. I don't fucking know.
That definitely happens a lot. Something that just popped into my head whenever you were talking about the quote unquote protagonist killing somebody else in the last song.
Yeah,
So the opening lyrics to this song are, "You found the key to escape from me, but I need the same key to run away from me."
yeah.
So if the you is the person that he killed in the last song,
Mm-hmm.
that takes on like a super fucking dark tone, where it's like, "Hey, I
Death is the
killed you.
escape.
I killed you. You found the way out because I killed you. Death is the way out. I need the same key to get away from myself." And then it's just like, fuck, man.
Fuck, man. Indeed. And yeah, I kind of also had similar thing, but the last verse, it doesn't like it
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily line up. It says, "And you know the need, and we see the same things." Again, kind of drawing parallels to themselves. "And we know the outside is your true inside," which those last lines specifically kind of made me feel like he's saying some people are ugly on the outside, but on the inside they're good, wholesome people, or vice versa, where the outside perspective is of a clean, wonderful person, and the inside is just hell and a shitty person. And he's saying like, no, that's not the case with you. Like, whatever you appear to be is exactly what you are, and we all know it. We both know that you're a terrible person, all the way down to your core, kind of a thing.
yeah, because they're a friend that's evil,
Yes, full
evil to
circle.
their core, full circle, except kind of full circle because it's back to
Back to
track
track
two.
two. Yeah. But yeah, this was a fucking trip of an album.
Hell
I
yeah,
love doing it this week. The album kind of paints in very vague, broad strokes which kind of just leaves a lot of space for your mind to drift and wander throughout all of the droning metal tracks, and it's good. I enjoy that.
Hell yeah. I also enjoy it, and I'm glad you enjoy it. It's great. I like making good recs.
This was a
It's
good one
awesome.
for sure. I really enjoyed this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about, actually for the next 2 weeks, I'm taking over. I'm kicking Joey off the podcast. It's just me for the next 2 weeks.
Just Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy. Just wait for you to say it. I'm Joey. No, next week we're going to be doing an album from the band Loathe. The album was called I Let It In, and It Took Everything.
Oh, God.
Which is the first of, I consider it a double album. I don't think it was released necessarily as a double album. Let me see. I think they were released. Yeah, there were a few months at least between them. So there's I Let It In, It Took Everything is the one we're doing next week. And then the week after that, we're going to be doing the album they released afterwards called The Things They Believe. So we're kind of doing a double album just because I think it's an interesting, not double album, but also not a double album kind of a thing, where they're very much related. They're brother and sister albums, I think. So it'll be interesting to see how you react to both albums separately and then as a whole, I think, because I think they're both super interesting albums.
Well, that's pretty fucking cool.
It is.
And I hope I don't hate them
because you're just trapped for 2 weeks if you do.
Yep.
I will. I'm not even gonna say that. I was gonna
Okay.
say something that might spoil, but it's whatever. We'll see what happens. Maybe you'll hate both. Maybe you'll love one and hate one. Maybe you'll love both. Who knows?
That's what I hope happens. I like the last option that you gave.
Me too, man. Anyways, if you guys want to leave us some comments, please do so. I don't know how many people we're expecting at this point because our baby metal episode appears to be doing better, at least on YouTube.
Shit went fucking popping, man.
Than we actually do. It's been like a little over a day, and we've got a significant number of views, more than we usually. It's not a significant number of views, period, but more than what we usually get. So I don't know. People probably aren't into Jesu as much as baby metal. But if you like this album, please let us know if you have thoughts on the lyrics or how much religion is involved in this. We'd love to have that kind of discussion with you guys. So find us on social media, tweet us, whatever you got to do to get in contact with us. Next week, listening to Loathe's I Let It In, and It Took Everything. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you stay in our feedback loop.